Welcome in everyone from the role players, world builders, explorers, dice gremlins, and rules lawyers alike to Cloaks and Capes, a D&D podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Robbie Landis, a mostly forever DM, but sometimes my friends let me be a player, you know, as a treat. And with me today, you'll notice a slight change in our second chair since Callie is off on vacation. Our resident chaos gremlin and one of our CNC artists, Mia, is here with us. And our guests today, Justin and Taylor of So You Want to Be a DM and Sphinx City fame. Welcome in. And I think the first question I have for you is what would you classify yourself as? Like if you had to pick like a kind of like player archetype, you know, how would you classify yourself? I noticed Mia didn't argue with the chaos gremlin part.
No, that's me.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Just
okay.
This feels like
asking you to be a little introspective here. You know, if you need a second to kind of, you know, evaluate your life choices so far. If I'm making you, you know, face something about yourself that maybe you've been trying to, you know, keep in the dark, maybe.
I think if I had to classify myself into one of the D&D archetypes, it'd be power gamer, because I am definitely
there's nothing wrong with that.
Min-maxer.
yes,
Justin knows. At their table, Justin
Confirmed.
knows.
Correct for Taylor. Taylor is the reason that I handle the shield spell super specifically. I'm the DM who says, like, I know you're resting AC, and I say, that hits, and then you tell me if you cast shield. That's just, I'm not.
And you, Justin?
For me, my player archetype, I suppose, would be just a silly little guy. just a little guy.
Yeah.
I'm usually there for jokes and just to keep everybody having a good time. I like my charisma score to be high enough that the mechanics will support me wanting to say things. Although sometimes it's funny to play against that and dump stat charisma and then also still be the face.
we love silly little guys around here, absolutely. So for today's episode, we had you on. Now you did, I believe, one season of an actual play called Sphinx City, which is a completely homebrew setting. And the majority of what I've done in the past, also a homebrew setting. And I know that Mia, you've done like a lot of stuff. You've done, you know, some homebrew stuff here. Specifically, why I think you're going to make sense for this episode, except the fact that Callie isn't here, so like I needed somebody else to help out here.
We miss you, Callie.
But I think it actually works out because, and we'll ask you a little bit more about the setting that you created for your family Daggerheart campaign, I believe. But what we're talking about today is taking like outside media, right? Taking inspiration from like other art, you know, games, animes, movies, you know, books, and incorporating those into your world in a way that hopefully your players don't notice. If they're obscure enough, they probably won't. But, you know, I've definitely had on stream before, I've had some people come in before and say, is it wrong to like, to do that, to take inspiration from things and create these stories out of them? Because they had some players that apparently realized what they were using and called them out on them and basically said, you shouldn't do that. And I feel like probably pretty unanimously here, we probably all agree that that's bullshit. So that's kind of where we want to jump in here is what are your views, I guess? Like, where do you stand on being inspired by and using popular media in your campaign? Justin, did anything specifically, did you use anything in regards to like creating Sphinx City, for example?
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, I think the first thought of Sphinx City was born from Dimension 20's season of Unsleeping City. So Brendan Lee Mulligan, famously a New Yorker. I'm from New Jersey, so I have a lot of romanticism about...
Pretty much the same place, right? From what I hear.
Play, but regardless. Practically the same place. And we're just a hop, skip, and a leap over the bridge. It's fine. But I also romanticize New York, but I don't know it at nearly the same level that Brendan did. So I never wanted to just jack that idea in its whole cloth and use it exactly the same. So it was like, okay, I want to use D&D as the system, but I want to do a modern setting. I've already seen that it can be done via Unsleeping City. We're not changing a ton of things. It's mostly flavor. And then what is it like when a city is both modern and magical, when it's just as likely to see somebody on the street holding a cell phone navigating the internet versus seeing the hot dog vendor is an actual fire elemental and just holds hot dogs in their hands. Boom, cooked, done.
To grill them or whatever.
Do you know what I mean? Like, so what does it look like when both of those things exist at the same time? What if New York City was founded on an idea of magic and it came up that way? So when it comes to Sphinx City, having that modern and magical and then adding in like a humor level to it, it's been Jack Panic referred to it as having a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles vibe to it a little bit in its cartoonishness. But that's where the inspiration came from. So it was very much like New York, but how do I make New York D&D? And thus creating its own thing, which is Sphinx City.
Yeah, you saw something that you liked, the Unsleeping City, thought that's a cool vibe, and then just sort of made your own story in that kind of setting.
Exactly.
Now, Mia, I had mentioned your Daggerheart campaign that you run for your family is like How to Train Your Dragons inspired. Like it's on like floating islands and everyone like flies dragons around, right?
Yeah, so that was one of the campaigns for sure. And yeah, I love me some How to Train Your Dragons. I actually just got a new supplement about dragons for 5e. But yeah, like kind of like what Justin said, it's just a vehicle for motivation to get started, to have like to just put that first paragraph on the page, right, for whatever it is that you're trying to build. And I think the way you're describing it too, Justin, is very much a layering of things, because of course you're still going to put your own spin on it. You'll pull from different things in a way that you kind of create this formula where it becomes its own thing, like regardless of like what ingredients you threw in there. So for me, yeah, I always tend to think of like what is something that inspires me creatively, as an enjoyer of media, as a writer, and like starting there from like a point of passion is really what one fights the ADHD, and gets me excited to bring something hopefully engaging and compelling to the table. So for me, it's like, yeah, just a layering of a lot of different things that I think can create a good story. So.
Mm-hmm.
Taylor, what about you? How often or how much from like popular media inspires, the characters that you create?
Oh boy. So my main character that I play at Justin's table is literally stolen out of the Stormlight Archive books by Brandon Sanderson. It's Kaladin. Like I just grabbed him and yanked him. And I don't know, I do it a lot. I really honestly, I feel like in like episode 1 or 2, like when Justin and I are talking about like how do you get started playing, like doing being a DM, I basically just lean in. I'm like, steal everything, because that's really my thought process when it comes to finding inspiration for whatever. I love the Stormlight books. I actually did do a campaign kind of based in that setting a little bit. And then obviously with one of our actual play things, I stole from like just straight up yanked Resident Evil and put it into a D&D setting. But like even on like a like NPC level, whatever show I'm watching at the time winds up making it into the show. Like the whole like the home game situation, our main like faction of like Kingsguard people, like these high level people. They're just, most of them are just the alchemists from Full Metal Alchemist. Like I just stole Roy Mustang and Armstrong and just put them into the game. And with my players, like they don't care that it's not D&D. They love finding the references. They love catching on to what I'm putting into the game, and they eat it up. So
it's so brave of Taylor to come out here and be like, yes, everyone, meet the NPCs. This is Yegolas. Over here we have Larithorn, Prince of Men. This is Tugs Bunny.
Exactly.
Well, especially in like home games too. Like it's all about having fun. And everyone loves these characters, right? So like, yeah, put those references in there. Have fun with it. The same thing happens to me. I'm a little bit more nervous about it sometimes, since we stream a lot of our games because we have a big community that loves just being able to watch and like sort of be a part of that. So it is a bit anxious for me sometimes when I'm taking inspiration and I'm trying to change it enough to where people don't look and be like, hey, you're just using Brennan's character from Misfits and Magic. Hey, Matt did that last week. Okay, but in fairness, I planned this 3 weeks ago. I didn't know Matt was going to use this idea. So it can be a little rough in that in that way. But when you look at the fact that some people, just straight up are like, hey, we want to play in the Avatar world, right? Like we want to be Aang in Friends, So like the fact that some people just go out and just straight up play in those worlds, absolutely. You got to take what you love, you got to take what you know, use that to inspire. And anyone who tries to give you crap for it, what is it? Isn't it something like you can boil all stories down to like 7 like original plot points
right.
or something like that? Like everything has already been done before. And I think if you just look to try and put your own spin on it, that's usually how it starts to sort of change things up, right? I want to take a minute and talk about like from a player's perspective, because a lot of people out there are obviously mostly players, and I think especially newer players when they're first getting into D&D for the first time, they usually have some character or some archetype, Taylor, like you had mentioned, the character that you played, that they just think is cool. I remember I had a player years ago who was a big World of Warcraft fan, and when he played, he's like, I want to be Arthas. I want to be not like the Lich King, but like before he's like, I want to be the guy that turns into the Lich King. His name was like Abaddon or something like that, and he described himself. He looked exactly like Arthas. He didn't roll super well, and all of his ideas weren't super well executed. So like he didn't come across as Arthas. He came across as like this edgy guy that like wanted to be cool and like wanted people to take him seriously, but like he didn't really have the skills to kind of back it up. So it was this sort of endearing, like, oh, look at him, he's evil. He wants to be evil. Right. So one of the questions that I got from someone in my Twitch stream a few days ago was, in regards to like, how do you determine the personality of your character? And I think especially when you start with something like, okay, I want to make, someone who's reminiscent of, Keyleth from Critical Role, because I want to play a druid, and I think that what she does is kind of really, really cool. But you don't just want to be Keyleth. So like, how do you go about determining where those changes happen, or like, how you make this character your own?
Well, for me, I think, truth be told, a lot of the times I find the character as I go. Like that's why even with our actual plays, like we've chosen to focus on series, albeit short ones, as opposed to one shots. Just like we're not doing Critical Role. We can't do 3 years. I just can't. My ADHD, I cannot tell the same story. I'm sorry. But the reason I love campaigns is I often find my character as I go a lot, like especially like really important things. Sometimes they come from the most inconsequential places where like the DM starts with a weird icebreaker. What pizza topping would your character hate? And it's like, okay, what the hell? My character would hate pineapple on pizza. What does that mean? Why do they hate pineapple? Why are they a pizza purist? Well, maybe they met their dead wife at a pizza parlor, and her family owned it, and he was a delivery boy, and this is how they start. And then now I have so much more to build off of because of a pizza question. So that's where I usually find that difference and like making it my own. But it usually starts with like nuggets of things.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of tropes because I think there's so much room to play with the trope. You can lean in, you can lean out, you can go against. And so those are my favorite. Barbarians, what are they like? They're dumb. They're big,
and Callie would
bulky,
get along very well.
What if they were smart? What if they knew magic? They can't cast it when they're raging, but what if they knew magic? And like all this kind of stuff. So that's usually where I start.
Yeah. I don't know. For me, it's all about the goofs, baby. I gotta.
Yep, we all love a good bit.
I do take the character as a like jumping off point, but like one of my characters that I made, the first time that Justin and I played together, my first character was Batavian Manchesterfield, which you take the letters and it was Batman. Basically, I made a really goofy, like less like super serious like Dark Knight Rises and more Lego Batman, just because I love
is it usually taking like a darker or serious character, knowing that you like to be goofy and like using that as a way to kind of like deconstruct?
Yes. Yeah. Because even Kaladin in the Stormlight books is very super serious all the time, but my version of him is not that at all. And it's a lot of fun.
And just putting in one tiny little aspect like that can normally be something that for the most iconic character is enough to send him off on like a completely different branch than what you would, expect out of where it started.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's I don't know. It's a lot of fun. I my goal at the D&D table is to get everybody laughing, and that's usually what I go for.
All right, Mia, what about you? Because I've seen a few of your characters now, like you had mentioned. Actually, I don't know if this was in the pre-show or not, so this doesn't make sense to you. Maybe you should go download the Raw on Patreon. But when you first played one of my games, you were Sin, who was raised an orphan. Had these paladin powers, though did not believe in the gods, was very serious, was ex-military. Then you played Corey, who was a genie warlock and the Emily Axford of my table. I know that probably just makes your ego so big.
I know. That's a big title.
And now I'm playing with you in another game where you are this sort of witch in the woods, sort of mysterious. I don't know. Sometimes silly, but also like you're probably eating people's energy. So like, where do you get that from? How does your process start? Do you take inspiration from other places when you're doing these sort of things?
Yeah, all the time.
Because your characters feel like I could look at them and find archetypes, but I don't know that I could look at a character and be like, this is what you started with.
Oh, thank you. I just really good at smoke and mirrors. No, I think like what we've all been kind of saying, like, to me, playing a tabletop role-playing game is about collaboration, right? So when it comes to like, say if like here's a character that I like I'll think of it maybe in terms of like concept, aesthetic, themes, right? And like maybe like I'll do my own like little like, oh, do I want more aesthetic? Do I want more like character arc in what I want for this character potentially? But really my biggest pull and what kind of like finalizes the character for me is party dynamic, really. Like I created Sin, the serious orc who believed in no gods, because like for one, like the party was already a bunch of kind of
godless heathens.
Yeah, godless heathens. But in a way that their actions were very chaotic and damaging a lot to like the people they say that they're trying to help. So being also godless was like my way in, but also in a way that was like, hey, but I'm still responsible, and like here are the things that you guys are doing wrong. With Corey, that one was truly like, I just want to go nuts. Like I was like, I don't care what anyone else was playing. But in that same vein, like I also kind of uncovered Corey as I played them throughout the campaign, because it's like so many things change. Like sometimes when like you first start out that session, by the end of that first session, you're like, well, this is a completely different character and we're just gonna go with it. And I really had to learn how to like balance being like the new, hey, I'm the chaotic gremlin of the party, but still put them on a path that they could later grow into a character that was, contributing or could still mesh well with the party. So for me, definitely inspiration, taken from other characters in media, but to make sure that I'm just going to use the previous metaphor, that my formula can use other pieces from the other characters in the party as well.
Yeah, I think you and Justin really hit on something that's really important for people to learn early on, that I think everybody eventually learns, is that when you have this idea in your head for what the character is or what you want the character to be, you need to be willing, once you get in the game, to allow them to change, because that's where I think a lot of the meeting and the sort of entertainment, as a player and as a DM, as people who play these games, comes from. But I think that also you can't like lock yourself behind something. You got to be willing to change, take what other people give you. And Justin, you said that like throughout the whole thing, you're constantly adding new things. I always encourage people to ask yourself even silly questions, like you that was a great example, the whole pizza thing, of like what you can take from an example. I have this exercise with my characters. Well, I'll answer something small like that, a favorite food, a smell, a memory, and then find ways to use it in that session, even if it's just a little like 30-second thing. For one of my characters who had grew up in an orphan, I had this memory of how, she didn't like to steal, so she would fish out of the moat for like, breakfast and stuff like that. So she knew how to fish, she knew how to cook. And that ended up being like a 45-minute like aside when I asked the DM, hey, could I fish us up some breakfast? And so he's like, cool, we're doing a skill challenge of fishing now. We're going to see how well you can cook it. And oh no, spider frogs are attacking you out of this little lake in the forest. And it became this huge thing, because I was like,
I was just trying to put that image in my head.
Yep, skated right past
this.
that.
Yeah, no, this DM had a very like Avatar world building of any animal is actually two animals. Callie almost died to a mole shark, but luckily when it pulled her into the ground, I shot down into where it went, killing her and the mole shark. So the mole shark did not kill her. We got her back, obviously. We dug her out. We, revived her. Everything was fine. We eventually fell in love, got married, and have a kid. So everything turned out okay. But the point is, like, there's a lot of people, and I'm even like discovering now too with like newer players, that they seem to like differentiate this idea between like, oh, story moments that matter, and like, oh, this over here doesn't matter. And like, having trouble finding when they should role play and when they shouldn't, because, oh, well, this isn't a serious moment versus this, and it's like, it could all be.
Who's to say?
Yeah, exactly. Like,
you never know.
This game is about what you put into it. And if you're just waiting for the big moments and not creating the small, unnecessary, insignificant ones, then really you're robbing yourself and the other players of just more material to work with.
Yeah. Not to mention, if I can piggyback off of that, because like the idea that this moment isn't important is only true if the remaining X number of sessions it stays unimportant. That can change at any moment. Like, do you know when you're binging a show on some streaming service and they do the recap, like episode? I've talked with Taylor about this, the episode recap thing. And they'll bring up things from like last season, and you're like, why are they showing me this random NPC? And then the episode plays, and you're like, thank God they showed me that, because I would have forgotten that this person knew this person, and they shared a moment. And now I know.
My favorite example, and I'm going to do this in a non-spoilery way for anyone who hasn't seen Misfits and Magic Season 2, but there's a moment where one of the characters wants to take another character's phone to call up an NPC because they had told them something that they realized was inaccurate, and they just wanted to correct themselves. That's all they wanted to do. That could have been 10 seconds. Cool, let's leave it. And they then got some information from that NPC that sort of changed the way that they realized another character looks at them. It was like a big sort of like defining moment. And if Bria would have just been like, yeah, okay, you call and they make fun of you because you're a weird little dude, cool, yeah, you're right, that would have been insignificant. But like they turned that stupid little moment of like, oh my God, I defined something the wrong way, I need to correct myself so they don't think that I'm dumb, was a big, pivotal moment. So yeah, honestly, I think that when it comes to this idea of, I don't want people to know that I'm ripping off Percy from Critical Role, the story that you're telling isn't Percy's story. So at some point, you are going to diverge so far from it. Mia, Zana was the mixture of Percy and Joker from Mass Effect. And I don't think anybody who watches either versions of Zana, whether she's in her assassin form or whether she's in her autistic form, that anybody would realize that those are the two characters that inspire. See, look at you. Like your face right now is like,
I'm going through a journey right now. Let me have it. I'm thinking. Wait.
Whoa.
Yeah. So let's flip this over here a little bit now. Let's talk from the DM perspective, because I think that players definitely have it a lot easier because it's usually just finding one character or maybe two characters, mushing them together, and then by the time you interact with the world and with other characters, like you will definitely find yourself a far cry from where you started as Bruce Wayne Jr. So
I thought you were going to say a character from the Far Cry series. It's like another IP.
A Far Cry from Far Cry. How do you make a story everyone else might know feel original? Well, I guess the first question here is because I think in a lot of cases what we do is primarily, I think we take like settings and we use those to inspire the settings we've created. Has anyone here ever tried to tell a story or a version of a story that you really enjoyed, and what goes into trying to change that? So someone's like, really, you want us to take this necklace up to a giant forge hidden in the mountains that we have to throw this into to destroy it so that the Witch Queen can... Really? Is that what we're doing, DM? Yes, it is a perfectly legitimate and original story. Why? What's wrong?
Yeah.
Anyone have any kind of experience with that?
I mean, we did an actual play called The Public Domains.
I love that.
That was the name of the land. The setting was called The Public Domains. That was the name of the world. And there was, Kong Island. There was the Isle of Ravens, which is, of course, Edgar Allan Poe. There's Mount Olympus. There's Alice in Wonderland. I think I changed 100 Acre Woods to 1,000 Acre Woods because I thought that was funnier and scarier.
Is it not the 1,000 Acre Woods?
It's technically the 100 Acre Woods.
Oh, I also thought it was.
But I just changed it to 1,000. It sounds scarier.
It does.
Yeah,
a lot of woods.
That's a lot of woods.
Because that was the thing, was like one of the characters was going to play Winnie the Pooh. So I had talked to that character. What's your relationship like with Christopher Robin? How are you with the other animals in the woods? Because my vibe, I was thinking of having, and this is the collaboration part of talking to that particular player who has the connection to this part of the world. I'm thinking of going horror with this particular part. I think that's interesting for Winnie the Pooh. I think obviously there's that one weird horror movie that they made.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
I don't watch scary movies.
I don't either. So I can't handle them.
But I know it exists.
Can't handle them.
No, I can't
really want to
handle
see
them.
Death of a Unicorn because I love the actors in it, but no thanks.
Yeah, it's so scary. It's one of the horror movies that I think look good. I'll watch some like hour-long YouTube dissertation on it. I don't need to actually watch the film. But yeah, so it was just like building off of that and like talking to that player. What do you think of the relationship between Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh to be like in our retelling of it? Because we're going to be adding our own twists to things. At no point, I think it's too boring for me and for our viewers to like just do a play-by-play.
Yeah.
Of like, oh, you're in Alice in Wonderland and it's exactly like it is in The Looking Glass. No, let's have the Emerald City turn into the Emerald Inn, which is a like Hotel 8 or Motel 8 on the side of the river of the Yellow Brick Road. It's run by the Wicked Witch of the East. Boston. Wicked Boston. That's how the witch will be. Done. You know what I mean? Like it's dumb things like that. Who else can I pull in? Don Quixote's there because he's on a donkey, he's traveling. So it's just like looking up lists of public domains things and finding each one and going, how can I twist that? The Big Bad Wolf was like Danny Zuko from Greece.
Oh wow, that's great.
Robin Hood and his merry men were drag queens. Or excuse me, Robin Hood was a drag queen. The merry men were drag kings. And so just putting twists on every little tiny thing and like having the most fun with it.
Yeah, I think going in like the realm of parody like that, and I'm getting like major like Never After sort of vibes from that sort of idea too. Like especially when you're taking the stories and you're presenting them like, hey, we know what we're doing here, but we're doing something completely different. It's a great way to do it because then you get to lean harder into it. The campaign that we're getting ready to finish up with the second chances that Mia's in as Corey, the two things that inspired that for me was Final Fantasy 13, which I wasn't even that big of a fan of. And then Marvel's storyline of the incursions, where like the worlds are basically being smashed together, and the big bad is basically like, I'm just gonna smash everything together and start all over again. And when it comes to like the tattoos, it's just that they all have the same tattoos that give them powers, right? It's a very sort of baseline thing that Final Fantasy 13 wasn't even the first to do, right?
Right.
And so with the incursion thing as well, like the idea that I took from that was just this idea of worlds are being smashed together, they're being destroyed, and that's all you need, right? And that is fine on its own. Like, am I stealing it from Marvel? Yeah, sure. But it isn't this idea of now the worlds have to fight against each other, right? Everyone's sort of on the same side trying to figure out what exactly is happening. And so if you're not going to go like the sort of full parody aspect of it, this idea of just taking the small aspects, right? You'd say King Arthur inspires you. You could start with the sword and the stone and then make up your whole own original thing from there, right? Mia, when doing the like how to train your dragon stuff, was there any sort of additional sort of story stuff that you took from that, or was it just that you like dragons and you just wanted people to ride dragons and that was the only thing you took? Because that's enough.
I like dragons. And I for sure it was definitely like the whimsy and fantastical setting of like, floating islands and dragons you can ride to explore them. But I can't think of like a direct source of media where I got this from, but I made it like a coming of age story for the players, where it was like their island was like a tribe of like of people who had these like deep bonds and histories with like their paired dragons, and there's a whole like procession and ceremony when it comes to like choosing your dragon and how to train your dragon and all of that. And it's so hard for me to say how much I like actively pull from other media when it comes to developing storylines, because I really very much heavily rely on like my players' backstories and what they're interested in.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely.
Like I know that I'll have a player who they love drama, they love like twists and turns of like betrayals and surprises from NPCs that they've had and thought were beloved allies, and then I have some players who are like, everyone I love is safe and I can trust them, and that is it. I'm like,
that's another good point though. Like if you're concerned that like I want to tell a story similar to this, but people are going to recognize what I'm doing, not when your players get through with it. When your players get their hand on that story and that plot, it's not.
It's a really great thing because one, I want to play this public domain setting. First of all, Justin, but it
was so fun.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic, and I think it's one of those things why we love coming back to like folk tales and fairy tales, because even though they've been redone and everything, the fun is subverting it. It's giving players a chance to write their own chapter in that world or with that like plot line. So it's really great stuff for story opportunities.
Taylor, you said, and I know it's been a minute since I think you've DM'd. It's been a few years, you said. But do you have anything else that you wanted to add to any of this?
Yeah. So with my world, the main plot was a story that has already been told of, that basically I just stole from the Stormlight archives. Like I just wanted to tell that story, but just kind of like a trick that I used was every session wasn't necessarily, okay, this is advancing the main plot of things, but I would use pre-written modules and tweak them to fit the story, and that in itself changed the trajectory of everything. And being just that kind of stitching together of a bunch of stories turns it into its own whole thing of, and y'all have all basically said everything. I really love all of the ideas that came out. The Final Fantasy 13 mixed with the Marvel, those two stories mesh together very well, that it just kind of, at some point you just kind of throw it all in the big stew pot, and what comes out is something completely its own thing. That, it's just kind of how the stories get written, and how you can kind of make it fresh for your players without having to do a whole lot of additional work on things. Because my whole DMing thing was, I was a very busy person all the time. And so I didn't have time to sit down and write notebooks and notebooks and notebooks of stuff. So I would take small bits and then tweak them so that they all kind of fit together.
Yeah, when it comes down to it, we tell stories that are about the human experience, about our experience, and everything that we go through, someone else, has been through before. And there's a particular song that I discovered a few months ago that I now, like, every night I watch different people react to it. I don't know if anyone's familiar with High Ren by Ren. It's like 45 million views or something like that. You should definitely go and look it up. But there's a particular section in there where he talks about, wanting to do something that hasn't been done before, a battle with his subconscious. And then, in the song, in the lyrics, he recognizes that Eminem's did this before. And he's like, yeah, but I do it this way. Well, no, but Plan B did it that way. And, there are so many artists that I think vibe with that. And there are some people in the reactions that point out that this is like, well, the idea might not be original, like this performance is so unique and original. And just by doing something yourself and putting your own spin on it, even if the story has been done elsewhere, you are giving it its own sort of unique spin. And I think that's something important for people to remember. So where I want to end like this before we get into our final Am I the Asshole version of the story, which I'm very much looking forward to. I have a question I'd like everybody to answer. We'll start with you this time, Taylor. Have you ever been called out for like an inspiration or like using something somewhere to where someone's like, hey, wait a minute, are you just doing this thing? And if not, maybe we hide it really well, or, our friends just aren't assholes. And if not, what is sort of your favorite, I guess, creation that you've made out of something that inspired you?
I don't know. I've always, when I was DMing, because it was home game stuff, didn't really have to worry about like copyright issues or what have you. I was always very much pretty right on the nose with it, where my players would recognize it almost immediately, but then it would follow up with, okay, so I know it's this, but how is it different now? Mm-hmm. So like I did a whole like we had been playing the same characters for a really long time and wanted to change things up. So I did kind of like a Final Fantasy VIII flashback scene where everybody
was from the same orphanage.
Right. No. But like everybody kind of had the same like background thoughts of like the memories when they flash forward to their characters, like their main characters, they still retain all of the memories of the people that they were in this other like 2 or 3 shot that we did. And so being able to use that to tell more of the story in a different way of like, okay, so these guys are going down this pathway that the main characters didn't know about, and now they do. So it leads them off on another pathway. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I've always been pretty right on the nose with it. I mean, even the Resident Evil thing, it's just like one of the things was one of the monsters I just called legally distinct liquor. Just because
Mia, I saw you trying to raise your hand there at the start of that question. What do you got?
Did I raise my hand?
I feel like you were kind of like, I have.
Oh gosh.
Was it on the being called out part that somebody recognized something, or
yeah, I
or
thought
you have
were
a particular
calling me out. How we sometimes call you out for, but anyway.
For what? What would I have been calling you out for?
Well, sometimes like you said, we're just like, oh, I thought Mr. Mercer.
Who's
did
Corey
that.
based on? What inspired Corey?
No one. Corey
You're a
ran.
liar. I think you're a
I'm not
liar.
a liar.
You're gonna
I
lie
would never
directly to
lie.
my face like that?
Mm-mm.
All right, Justin, you got anything for us?
Have I ever been called out before?
Yeah.
I mean,
Or
Taylor
if you
would know
just
this
have a-
probably
yeah.
better than I
Uh-huh.
would in terms of noticing things. I think there are definitely some moments, especially in our home games, when they're less like sometimes more improv and I can change things on the fly and stuff, where like a character comes in and is like, it will just say something like the power of youth. And it's like, oh, Justin's been watching Naruto this freaking week.
Yep.
Like, got it. This character's name Guy, like, okay. Or something like that, where it's like very obvious. But I think in actual plays and like the games that we've been really serious about lately, other than public domains, because that one, it was also intentional. I want
Yeah.
people to notice things. Like when I point out a person behind the bar who's like sleepwalking but making drinks and she's wearing a huge ball gown, I want you to eventually get that it's Sleeping Beauty, and then I'm putting, that's my twist on Sleeping Beauty, is that she's a sleepwalking bartender. But like, hilarious, she's not good at making drinks.
Who would have thought?
She's constantly dropping glasses. It's
gosh.
not good for business. But I think, I'm trying to think, has there been a time where somebody called me out? Not in a huge way. I don't think so. I think I've done enough of a job where if people are calling it out that much, I want them to. I intend
Right.
for them
Yeah. That
to
makes sense.
notice
That
it.
makes sense.
Luckily, I'll put enough of a twist. There are things like if I put a trailer for Sphinx City and I just mention that it's like, I put on a New York accent and I'm like, hey, we're at Sphinx City. It's magical. People are like, has this person seen Unsleeping City? And it's like, all right, well, we're going to get that. I get it. You know, like, so that's, I guess, the most.
Most of the stuff that happens to me, it's not like big things like, oh, you took inspiration from this or that. It's usually just stuff to where like I'll do a small innocuous thing, like maybe I'll like reference this magic item or like use this piece of lore, and then someone will be like, oh, interesting, that happened just yesterday on Critical Role, and it's like, okay, just because like they used a beholder and now I have a beholder doesn't mean that I'm copying Critical Role. But as far as like one of the most recent things that I've done that I really like and then I think turned out really well because everyone really latched onto it is my partner's character has like issues with like her with her parents who never really loved her, you know, growing up, and she recently found out that her father isn't her real father, that she was born just before her mom met her. And the reason that ended up happening is because we were watching Fantasy High, and Lou's character, his father, you know, was on screen, and they were doing like a big battle, and she goes, oh, I wish Hermia's dad was like that. Oh, really? Well, it's not too late to change it. And so I took Lou's character's dad and then mixed him with Lobo from DC and made an undying archfey.
Nice.
And
Okay.
he's so bombastic and is just and he's lawful evil too. So like he's always doing, like, I think was one of the things he did. He was leaving a letter for her character, you know, apologizing for leaving. So she woke up in the morning and there was a fairy who, with like a dagger through the wings, was stabbed to her door, and the fairy's like, I have a message from your dad, and like recited the message back to her. She's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. So it's different enough that if you don't know who I'm basing it on, I don't think you see it. But when I tell you, you're like, oh yeah, I see both of those things. I see both of those things. Yeah.
It's really interesting how even when you come in, we've talked about this before, but from the DM perspective of like, you come in and you're like, I'm going to do an adventure that's kind of like Fantasy High and X meets Y or whatever. And then it doesn't survive the players' inputs and their own. And that also, it works the reverse way, because Taylor talks about picking up Kaladin from the Stormlight archives and dropping them into my homebrew version of Faerun, because it was my first time DMing and like running my own campaign. So I just took Faerun and then took out all the really problematic things and was like, hey, if the orc is evil, it's because that one guy sucks. Not all orcs are born evil. We're getting rid of that. There's going to be a baker in the store who's an orc. Just deal with it. Once we got past that. But I think I have never read Brandon Sanderson. I don't know Kaladin. So I told Taylor that, heads up, how close do you need or want to stay to his arcs, you know? Because, like, I don't even freaking know them. I don't know this guy Kaladin at all. He's not going to survive my changes. And I think if you were to change the name Kaladin Stormblast to a different name and had seen our entire home campaign, I think there would be enough moments where you're like, feels like strongly inspired by this character,
Yeah.
but not enough to where people are like, it's a ripoff or something. Because Kaladin, from what Taylor has told me about the real Kaladin, because I don't know them, seems completely different.
Oh yeah,
He's so fun in our thing. We have a whole joke about if there's a pie on a windowsill, man. Cal is going for it. He floats. His
straight up like cartoon.
He's wearing mithril. His mithril armor just lets him go.
Like cartoon pig, just like following the set.
Exactly, like a cartoon pig. Yes.
I feel like that's probably the best way to go about it, though, is that if you take a popular character like that you're not really interested in doing a whole lot of changing to, but your DM is like, well, I know nothing about it. Perfect, because now you're not hindered by any sort of like expectations or like preconceived notions or anything like that.
And it worked with the Resident Evil thing too, because I don't know anything about Resident Evil except for zombies. Which is like really only, I think, maybe the first Resident Evil. I just remember the one in the movie theater that I used to play at, but that's it.
The Vampire the Masquerade campaign that I joined, I know nothing about World of Darkness or Vampire, so I made my character a Thin Blood who got changed 2 days before when the session took place.
Incredible.
So he doesn't believe in
that's
vampires.
awesome.
He knows nothing. He knows as much about it as I do, and it was fantastic. Like the players, the DM themselves were all just like, that was unlike any character or game that I've played before because of that. And yeah, just look, just going into a game with inspiration or not, be true to yourself, and you'll be fine. All right, so with all of that advice out of the way, now we're going to get into some of the real good stuff here. I don't know how much of our show you've seen or that you are familiar with, but at the end of it, we like to read off some Am I the Assholes in Character Edition. So we have 2 stories here that were submitted from our community. Wanted to know if they're the asshole, and this is something that happened in the game as the characters themselves. So, my horrible patron broke through the wondrous sea and into the material world. I attempted to unshackle the living God in order to aid us in the hunt and accidentally transformed every human into the world into a beastkin. Am I the asshole? That's just the title. Let's get some context. Advice urgently sought. I just discovered that I have cursed the world, and the paladin in my party may just leave me for dead. I don't like that coldness that he has in his smile or the fire in his eyes. Maybe worse than dead, I fear. So my patron, Reynard, the shitty fox god of mischief, has burst through the veil and is going to wreak unimaginable devastation in our world. Fracti itself is breaking under the weight of an uninvited god. What else could I do? I had the Book of Power in my hands, and the shackled Sun King was begging me to restore his magic. The book was old magic. You know, it did not come with instructions. So go figure. I had to infer that it may still be governed by the laws of science, that fire can only burn if there's fuel, and in my humility, I judged that all 5 levels of my warlock powers were worth less than the fate of the world. I should have only been, it should have been only enough power to free the Sun King, not expand the curse. So I don't know what went wrong, but I made a desperate judgment. Yes, I generously gave up all of my power in this attempt. There's no chance that I can survive this, not on my own, especially not if people discover it was me who did this. So I need our paladin's protection now more than ever. So am I the asshole? From Vianne Legant. That's a lot. Whoa. That's a lot, Vianne. I'm not going to lie. That's a lot.
That's a lot, man.
I mean, when you get into the old magic stuff, it really is kind of like a...
You
are going to get...
You kind of shouldn't be real surprised about it.
Right, that it's going to go completely south.
It's
it's going to happen.
Interesting.
I feel like where I want to go here is like intention, right? Obviously, just based on what we're told, right? So, shitty fox god of mischief is coming through and is going to wreak devastation. This shackled sun god can fight them off, right? So we need to free them, and so that was their intention. I think you're right. Old magic though can do some stuff. But like, were they not supposed to free the sun god? Like, I don't know. I feel like I have to kind of Like the paladin is upset, rightly so. Everyone should be upset if everyone's been turned into Beastkin, right? But I don't know that it's Vianne's fault, right? Had she not freed the sun god in this fox god just went around killing everybody, like it's not a great outcome either, right?
Right.
I agree. I think I say no, not the asshole, because I think given the amount of context that we have, because of course I have a trillion questions. I would love to know more, but that's not the case here.
Everything.
So, using the limited context that we do have, this does feel like a quite high pressure situation. This is, I mean, I get it, right? If you cut the wrong wire just because you're under pressure, you're not a good bomb guy. I don't know what that
doesn't make you a bad person. You're just not a good bomb guy.
Right. You're not a good bomb guy. And so there's a part of me that just wants to know, like, you guys, your first instinct was it's old magic. You should have known better, almost, right? And I'm wondering, do they know better? How well known or unwell known is old magic in the setting, in the world, to where you find this old creepy book, and is it like have an eyeball and it's made of skin and all this crazy stuff where you're like, probably shouldn't read this.
Well, if it was just a matter of just reading the book, like nothing's happening, you're just like, oh, magic, then you'd be the asshole, right? But you were trying to solve something, and it was a desperate moment. And really, what really happened here, right? It seems like
sacrifice.
It seemed like you
personal
saved
sacrifice.
That's right, big personal sacrifice as well. But like when we really boil it down, right? All they really did, besides save the world, all they really did was make everybody furries, right?
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day,
True.
Some people are going to be more upset
Could
than
have
others.
been worse. I mean, everybody
right?
could have been dead.
Could have been very worse. Mia, you've been very quiet here. That either means that you agree or you are very much on the other side of it.
No, with Reddit stories, I'm always like, I want to hear from the partner or the paladin in this situation. I want to hear I want to hear their side of the story. Yeah. But no, I think I do mostly agree because like they could have been turned into mind flayers. They could have all become like actual animals instead of like half humanoid, half animaloid. Mm-hmm. I think though, I think where for me in this a question that they're not asking, I think what might make them an asshole is if maybe, I guess like what you guys would think is like, do they have a responsibility to be open about that? Like, should they let the public know? Because now, like, who knows what the rest of the world is thinking? Is like, hey, where's this coming from? We don't know what this is. Like, could that start like political like conflicts, right? Of like, different powers blaming each other. So that's where I'm like, well, I don't know. What do you do after that?
You know what? That's a good point. Yeah. Should they take responsibility for it or not? Yeah. Well, if you do want more context, you do want to know more about what's happening there, that actually comes from Fables of Frost and Fur, which we had the DM Kenny Mai on 2 shows ago. So if that all sounds really cool, you should probably go check out their stuff. Okay. All right, our last one that we have here. Am I the asshole for getting the wizard wet in Waterdeep? I was gallivanting around with my companions, figuring out the secrets of Waterdeep and its hidden treasures. My goblin friend fixing up my left arm from the rust that sat from the long idol, so a warforged probably. We came upon the docks where we might find clues, but the door to a bar where our biggest clue sat is too small for me. So the others went inside while I played the bouncer. Threw a couple of drunks out for a bit, silvers. Once they retrieved the information, we set upon the brigands. I charged upon their leader to feel the wrath of my anchor hammer, but the cursed wizard shattered the rocks I was standing on. To ensure the demoralization of the brigands, I latched onto their leader and I made him sink to the bottom of the harbor with me. My weight made him work until he didn't work anymore. I climbed out and I threw the limp body of the brigand leader at the wizard, then walked off to find something to make a metal monstrosity like myself drunk. Was I wrong to throw that body at my ally for simply dropping me into the water? Am I the asshole? From Ragnar the Unyielding.
It sounds, had you not thrown the body, then you'd be lying about what your name is, because you would be yielding, Ragnar. So I'm thinking, no, you're not the asshole. You're being true to yourself.
Yeah.
And even if I look at this like genuinely, like so seriously, DM giving actual real life advice, it's like you threw a body at a guy, he's fine.
Yeah.
One
He shattered
point
the
of hit
rocks that
damage,
dropped
who
you into the
cares?
water, and then you just
It's a
do
funny
a
tete-a-tete, I'm
soaking
into
body
it.
on him.
Yeah, it's like a sibling rivalry almost.
Yes.
I
Grow
love
up,
it.
wizard. His
I
ego's
love
too
it.
big.
You
Mia,
made him a little damp. He dropped you in the water.
he's a wizard. He has prestidigitation, right?
Big, done.
Come on.
Problem solved. Cantrip.
Yeah, I think maybe both parties should just seek therapy, couples counseling, and kind of talk about like, hey, I didn't like when you did that. I didn't like when you did that, and then yeah.
The I statements.
Yeah.
Huge.
All right.
So
Overall,
important.
2 not the assholes today.
Yeah.
It's also really weird. I didn't plan this, I promise. This is the first time that, with Callie not being here, that the Am I the Assholes doesn't involve, like, I got, freaky with some 1,000-year-old Fey entity. Am I wrong for that? But that's our show
No.
for today. Justin, Taylor, thank you so much for joining us today. This is we're on the show. You get to take a moment if you'd like to give any shout outs to where people can find you, any projects that you're working on. The floor is yours.
Well, I'm Justin Galliani. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm one half of So You Want to Be a DM. We have a podcast, So You Want to Be a Dungeon Master. Everything else is at So You Want to Be a DM, socials, YouTube, Twitch. We have a Discord. What else is there, Taylor? Patreon. We have merch, right?
Patreon merch.
Just started doing
yeah.
merch
Hey,
recently.
Hey.
Oh, see, Taylor wore the shirt.
Which is great
Well
for
done,
people
Taylor.
watching on YouTube, not so much for people listening
That's
to the
fair.
podcast.
That's fair.
Right, you're absolutely true. It's a blue shirt, maybe like a soft blue, a cornflower blue shirt, maybe.
Roll a
Into the
d20. Add your
full
perception to
description,
see.
But yes, we have our next actual play is coming out April 3rd, 2025, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on our Twitch. Again, at So You Want to Be a DM. Sphinx City, modern magical metropolis where the BBG is capitalism. Let's be honest. I didn't get into that when we talked about stealing things from Brennan Lee Mulligan, but what are you going to do, you know? He doesn't own capitalism, anti-capitalism, I mean. I'm allowed to take out CEOs.
Capitalism is everyone's enemy.
Right?
We did name, speaking of inspiration, the evil pharmaceutical company is called AstraZeneca Inc.
Nice.
Fun fact.
Nice.
But yeah, we're everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, come find us.
I guess the only thing I would add to this is I've gotten a couple of people try to look us up and can't find us. It's WANNA, wanna. So you want to be
Wanna.
a
That is
DM.
important.
Yeah. If you search want to, you're not gonna. It's almost impossible to find us until we get those. We gotta get them followers up. Once we get there,
Got to get that SEO going, man.
Yeah,
Gotta get that
yeah, yeah,
SEO
yeah.
going.
Tell me about it.
Gross. As for us, if this isn't your first time listening, then you know what we're all about here. And if this is your first time here, besides podcasts, we also do a ton of homebrew over at our Patreon, which currently includes nearly 900 magic items, 13 subclasses, the most recent of which is our Bard from the College of the Culinarian. And coming soon is our Malzari species, which is sort of a mixture of what if a tiefling and an Aasimar at the same time. And we're also getting ready to, or maybe have already released, a free one-shot set in Exandria that takes place during a festival being put on by the Fire Ashari. So go and check that out. You can find us on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Cloaks and Capes. And please leave a rating or a review on this podcast, depending on which platform you're listening on. But that's going to be it for us. So everyone, please keep watching, keep listening, whichever it is you're doing. We'll see you next time.
Hey guys, it's Corey. The Cloaks and Capes podcast is created by the support of its listeners and generous Patreon donors. Special thanks to our myth makers and legends like me, Heartslot, Dalvik, Celtic Crow, Darkflux, Gamer Gal, Strix River, Tater Thoughts, and Capelli. Views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of its hosts. Editing and production by Aaron Pillen and music provided by Aiden Haglund. If you want to support the Cloaks and Capes podcast and our campaign Second Chances, check out our Patreon over at patreon.com/cloaks and capes, and check us out on Threads and Instagram at Cloaks and Capes TTRPG.